Hey, friends, you know what time it is? You know what time it is? It's time to go live.
Nostalgia time.
Radio. This is awesome. I have missed this. I've been gone for 2 weeks. Apologize to everyone. I was on a family vacation and then I got sick, and that was stupid.
Just dumb. Just don't get sick. Just stop it.
I need to stop it. Prepper pro tip: don't get sick. As you guys are joining us, just heads up, Paris is not here. We miss him. We love him. He is out for the night, but he will be back next week. You get Shane, the prepared guy, and yours truly tonight, Scott. We are here in the house representing, and we're going to have a fun night tonight. We're going to reminisce a little bit. We're going to talk about some nostalgia things. We're going to talk about the old days when we launched this back in oh my goodness,
October of 2015.
October of 2015.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking right now at video 1, 2, and 3 of PrepperCon Radio.
They were so bad.
They were horrible. Guys, we were originally on the air at K-Talk Radio. They invited us over to be there, and it was insanity. We're like, why are you asking us?
It was baptism by fire.
And here we are, almost 9 years later, having a good time, trying to be a light and a resource. And we're having a lot of fun doing it. So thank you guys for keeping us from going crazy and keeping us from going too gray too early, giving us purpose in life outside of what we're already doing with our families. But for those of you who are just joining us, this is our weekly live. We do this every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Mountain, from the Rocky Mountains all over the world. So thank you for joining in. You can catch us live on our YouTube channel and on Facebook. Those are our two simulcast locations. We've got a lot of members joining in the live conversation. So you can join in and listen to everything and provide your additional insights, and we will read those things on air for our entire audience. So hopefully you can join us if you're not here this time, at least next time. Just some really cool housekeeping things. I want to announce, go to our Facebook group, Emergency Prep and Self-Reliance, to get in on the nitty-gritty. You can join our email list over there as well, or on our website, preppertalkradio.com. And this segment of this episode is brought to you by our good friends over at AMP3. Now, if you haven't heard of AMP3 before, you are new to the prepping world. AMP3 is amp-3.net, is one of the best first aid resources out there, hands down. Why do I say that? Because you can get the most phenomenal training from David Pruitt. He builds these kits, and he and his wife Beth build these kits. They're phenomenal. They're fantastic. I carry some in my car. Anytime we go anywhere, guess what's in there? One of my AMP3 kits. I use it, and I really appreciate them. They've asked to sponsor. We didn't reach out to them, but you know what? We're ecstatic because it's 100% made in America. They source everything locally. They package the kits themselves. It's all American made by Americans. He is an emergency room doctor. So he's got tons and tons of experience. He's also former U.S. Navy, retired. I just absolutely love these guys, and they're doing a super cool thing for us. They're giving us 15% off for all of you guys. Just use the code PrepperTalk. It's the same code we use everywhere. PrepperTalk, all one word. Boom. Go over to amp-3.net. You're going to get 15% off. This is phenomenal first aid kits. You're going to see more stuff about them coming up in the next few weeks, next few months, but just wanted to share them to you guys so that you can get better prepared. I think that's one of the core things that I always talk about in your preparedness: your shelter, your water, your food, your first aid, and your protection. Like, that's the core. Once you got the core, then you can start going out and looking at more. But if you don't have the core, you shouldn't be buying gadgets, gizmos, and other weird stuff at all. Get the core. And first aid is one of those things you cannot skimp on. Now, absolutely. Unlike other episodes where we have a lot of cool stuff we're going to cover today, well, of course you have cool stuff we're going to cover. We're going to dive into the library of prepping, of what started as PrepperCon Radio and is now Prepper Talk Radio, the podcast for the prepared. We're gonna go all over the place.
Yeah, now that I think back, is why didn't we just start out as Prepper Talk Radio? It's kind of common sense,
Well,
very little difference between PrepperCon and Prepper Talk. But I get it, and that was a little bit of a hard pill to swallow, I guess, for the station when we first came up with the PrepperCon radio, right? Because
well, it was because they wanted us to do it in line with the expo that I was running at the time that you were helping me do. Like that's kind of where it started, and I was like, I guess we'll just call it PrepperCon Radio, and you're like, okay, sure. And
yeah,
had you given me more pushback, I would have easily changed it. I just didn't know what else to do because I'm
yeah,
like, why are we going on the radio?
I was terrified. If you go back and watch our very first broadcast, the way we recorded it was just messed up. We figured it out after about a dozen episodes or so, and recorded the audio differently. But I can look at myself and see and just feel the tension and the nervousness. We didn't know how to operate the equipment or receive or take calls. But I think that's also what I really like about doing these lives. It's
Yeah.
almost like doing a live AM radio broadcast.
What's funny
Actually,
is
probably
I just
better with
posted
more
the link.
listeners here, but
I posted the link in the chat if you guys want to go check
oh,
it out.
okay. Oh,
It's
okay.
right there.
All right.
You could see the beginnings of my bald spot. You could see Kristen, our part-time producer there
Yeah.
in the videos. Like she's like, no guys, click this button. No guys, click that button. We're like, we don't know what we're doing.
You see,
But
most radio stations have a full-time producer. So all you would really have to do is show up, and they handle the volumes, they handle the calls and all that stuff. No, we had to do that all ourselves. Never having done this before. I'm like, Scott, you take care of this. I'm way too nervous to be able to try and talk and work the equipment as well, and bring the commercials in and out, and the music and so forth. And again, not very difficult, but I mean, it was all analog in the day.
but by episode 7, you were running the controls.
Uh,
You remember that? You were
I guess
teaching
so.
me.
I guess I was probably forced into it, right?
You were forced into it, and then you made me do it for like the next 4 episodes. Let's see, 4, 5, 6.
And then we started switching off.
And then I made you do it again. And then
yeah, it wasn't so bad. It's just a little nerve wracking at first, but
it was
I was
Panic at the Disco.
Yeah, it was definitely. And if you'll notice, and don't share this, Scott, but if you'll notice, you go to our YouTube channel, you'll see episode number 3, which we call the Fiasco Show, right? I think it was episode 3, maybe it's 4. And I do not go back and listen to our old broadcasts at all.
Really?
It is too embarrassing for me, for the most part, and probably especially that one. So please don't listen to that one. But we posted it anyway.
Was that the episode with Ms. America, Julie Harmon?
No, I think that was later on. That was maybe 5 or 6 or 7, something like that.
Okay.
And those went pretty well, but and I don't remember why it was so ugly. But
well, if anything you can learn from this is do the hard thing, and it won't be hard for very much longer.
Yeah.
Like keep doing things, keep expanding yourself, right? Keep practicing and preparing and doing more. If you don't get out of your comfort zone, you'll never grow.
If you don't know how to swim, what's the best way to learn how to swim? Jump in the pool, right? Jump right in.
What's that movie? There's an old movie with John Wayne where the kid doesn't know how to swim and he just throws him in the river. And it's just like, you're going to learn. Like, that's how I learned. Like,
yeah.
We learn much more by doing than by reading or perusing somebody else's knowledge bank. If you get in there and do it, you're going to do a lot better in life. And that counts towards prepping, but also towards personal and professional improvement.
And I think really not a lot has changed for me personally when we do these podcasts, broadcasts. We're still kind of jumping in. We try and do our prep. We try and be as prepared as possible, which is difficult because we both work. We have families, got a lot to do. And as you can see, we're kind of racing out of here, 45-minute mark or so. Like, oh, we got to get out of here because we got to get to this activity or that activity, which, I wish it wasn't like that. But kind of like also doing the lives is, we'd be cut off by the music, like you guys, some of like Rebecca, you noticed, like, oh crap, we're out of time. We had those hard lines where we had to cut off for commercials. The music would just come in. We had to wrap up at those points, which made it a little more entertaining, I guess, maybe a little more fun, a little more challenging. Which challenging is always fun. It really is challenging. Maybe not at first when you're nervous, but if things are easy, they're not usually worth doing.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's, I think, one of the reasons I continue to do this, because it continues to be hard for me. We do struggle. Maybe struggle's not the right word, but every week, like, okay, what are we going to talk about next week? What are we going to talk about next week? Sometimes we can plan out a month's worth, right? Or more. And we just know what to talk about. Sometimes it's like pulling teeth to try and figure out what we're going to talk about. But I think it usually works out, at the last minute, and part of inspiration. And that's, I think, one thing we really try to lean on is have spiritual inspiration. Okay, what should we talk about? What do people need to hear? What do I need to learn? Right? What do I need to prepare for, to talk about? And I think it's absolutely true for me, is the more I do this, the more I learn. And if you really knew me, how introverted I really am, and how much I'd like to sit on the back row, right? I am a back row sitter. I'm the one who did, I don't pipe up when I'm like in our church meetings, right? I'm not the one who raises my hands and makes a comment. Very rarely do I do that. I have a lot to say, but I'm not going to say it,
Well, it's funny because I look back at all the things we knew, all the things we didn't know, and all the things we've done since, and how much I've changed my preparedness game since those early times to now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There is an evolution. We've talked about this a few times.
Yeah.
There even is an evolution in prep, in what you prioritize and when. And I think it all starts in fear, to a degree.
Yeah.
Right.
True.
I think it all, for most of us, it starts in a place of fear, like, oh crap, I'm not ready for that. Right. There's a little bit, it may not be fear, but there may be a little panic. I don't know.
If you are not prepared, ye shall fear. Right.
It all comes down to, where are you putting your time and energy? And if you're not prepared, man, there's a lot of angst there, right? I grew up in a very prepared household. I thought it was normal to always have a year's supply of food and clothing, and, well, not all clothing, but food, clothes, soaps, detergents, cleaning supplies, lubrications for machines and tools. Like, I thought that was normal. Like, I'm third generation. Wow. Third generation. I'm the third group of people who didn't grow up on the farm. Like, 3 generations ago, they grew up on a farm in my family. And so it wasn't just farming, it was homesteading style farming. And it was multiple generations of family before that, for a couple hundred years, where it was all they did was learning to live on a farm and learning to live with less. And you had to fix everything yourself, and you had to do everything yourself. So having a year supply of food, having a root cellar, having all the different things, your dry food storage, and having all the skills, like, that was just part of life. And now, fast forward to me, like, I had friends growing up that I'm like, where's your food storage? And they're like, my what? Well, don't you guys have, like, food storage? Like, I remember this kid, Jeremy, we went to his house. He was one of my best friends as a kid, like first grade through sixth grade, one of my best friends. And he's just an awesome guy. He spends most of his time outdoors still. We'd go to his house and he's like, oh, if we can find the key, we can get into the freezer. And in the freezer, we've got food stuff. They didn't have food storage really other than that. But we found the key and we got in, and we got in a lot of trouble. But we were at my house, we knew exactly how to get into the food pantry. It wasn't locked away. It was, but we'd get into my house, we'd get the chocolate chips and graham crackers, and sometimes the marshmallows, but those were a little more in trouble if you got them. And so, like, we would find the stuff we wanted, and we'd raid the stockpile, so to speak, as kids. And at his house, he didn't have a big food storage. And I was like, what the heck? Where's your food storage? Where's your pantry? Where's your garden? None of my friends, we'd moved to this
Mm.
new place. None of the friends had gardens. None of them had food storage. They didn't have stuff. So when things got tough, times got hard, they didn't have something to rely on. And we always did. But it was generations upon generations of this is the indoctrination of this is how you live. And now I'm scared to death to live any other way.
Yeah.
Right. I've got first aid. I've got food. If I pan over this way, I've got food storage. Actually, I went through today and I FIFO'd the heck out of that stuff. First in, first out, right? I had a bunch of new food to put in there and I put all the old stuff, moving it forward, the new stuff at the back, right?
Yeah, and of course, the question that comes to my mind next is, okay, especially looking back and being a little nostalgic, what would I do differently? What would I, if I were able to go back, what would I change? What did I learn? You know, hindsight is 2020. If I were to have to restart, where would I start? What would I do differently than I did back? And you know, Scott and I were chatting a little bit before this. You know, we've both kind of been prepared guys our whole lives. So being, you know, as part of the scouting program, you know, that engenders that type of preparedness. And you know, his family, my family, we didn't have a lot of food storage and it was very basic. But we were very much an outdoor family and so forth. But in looking back, okay, what would I change? And thinking, I really became consciously competent, or at least conscious of my incompetence in kind of beginning of 2013. You want to talk about that?
No,
Scott?
just
Okay.
this leads into what you're talking about.
Okay. All right, cool. I'm just looking off in the distance. I'm not reading. So, and so that's really when I started to become aware. Maybe you could say awake. You know, that kind of wasn't really a term back then, right? Being awake, but being aware or anxiously engaged in a cause. And I was just eating up everything I possibly could at the time, and maybe making some not so wise decisions in food storage in particular, in firearms and those types of things. And of course, knowledge would, or having someone to help guide me. And I think even back then, 10, 11 years ago, YouTube was a pretty big thing, obviously, but there weren't as many YouTubers preppers at the time.
Yeah.
Obviously, it has absolutely blossomed and blown up since then. And so I think the first thing, if I were to look back and be conscious about the next step, I would have tried to find someone to help me along in that journey. And that would have saved me some money, saved me some time, some headache. Although, you know, another thing I firmly believe is not looking back or not having any regrets. And I don't have any regrets of the mistakes I've made because I've learned from them and I've made the changes. I do hate waste, time, money, all that. And I would love to shortcut. If I ever had to do that again, I know exactly how I'd proceed. So we can kind of talk about that and so forth.
I think that's a really great point. How would you change, knowing what you know now? If you could go back and prioritize things a little bit differently in that journey, how would you change that prioritization or implement that what you know now? I mean, because now we're operating from a place of wisdom, whereas earlier in the process, we were operating from a position of drinking from the fire hose. Right, we were trying to consume as much information. A lot of you can listening in and probably like, man, I can completely relate to this. Like, I was always in the world of preparedness, but there was a point in 1999 to 2002, you know, especially the whole Y2K thing. I was like, oh, this is right up my alley, and everyone's panicking, and I'm like, I got this. This is good. I hope this happens. And what's funny is I started learning that there's certain things that I don't know. And there's big gaps in my knowledge base. And so I too was drinking from the fire hose, trying to find all the resources I could. And I'll be honest, the best resource is one of these resources right here that I go back to over and over again. So many different versions of this is the Boy Scout Handbook. So I could get my brain up to speed on a lot of topics really fast. Then I went to bushcrafting and I went to survival books, right? If I could go back and do things more efficiently, Here's one of those, the survival guide book. I would go back and I would focus my energy on first aid training and food storage, because water is easy. Get a bunch of it. Store it wherever you can. Get a bunch more. Store it wherever you can, right? And it's the cheapest, most affordable part of the process. But first aid knowledge, huge gap in most people's preparedness.
Yeah.
Right. And then food storage. I've always been a standard pantry guy, long term. And we talked about this before the show. How did I have my food stored when I was a single guy living in apartments? Pop quiz to see if you remember. You're not even listening to me.
Oh, I'm chatting. Sorry.
Prepared guy.
When you're living in your apartment,
yeah. How did I keep my food storage?
Under your bed, propped up your bed.
Yeah.
It's probably 4 feet off the floor, right?
At one place, I had my bed probably 4 feet off. This is in California. I had my bed raised 4 feet. Everything I had, 6 months worth of food, a whole bunch of water, a couple 96-hour kits. Like everything was under my bed because it was in this tiny bedroom apartment. And what was funny is whenever the earthquakes would hit, that bed was like this. And I could feel it. And it was like, what a ride. But I just always had it. And now I look back and I go, how could I do that better? There's not a lot I would change. I would still do a lot of that the same, but I would have gotten a lot more knowledge earlier on. In first aid, specifically.
And of course, when you start out, well, at least I'll speak for myself. When I started out, it's about the stuff. I mean, I've been a gearhead. Admittedly, I've always been a gearhead, and that's kind of one of the things that attracts me to some of my hobbies as youth. I'd love mountain biking. I had a nice mountain bike. I love rock climbing. I had all the gear, and that's part of it. Obviously, learning how to use the gear properly and safely, super important. But also, like some of the conversation here in the chat is trying to keep up with the Joneses. I think getting away from that can be one of the hardest struggles for a lot of people. I know for me earlier, when I was not awake, when I wasn't aware, I think, of course, the first thing that pulls you in, you want to have a nice car. And of course, that's the way I grew up as a kid, man, get right back off the LDS mission, man, I got to get myself a nice car. How stupid is that? I look back, man, what a waste. What a waste, but again, no regrets looking back. Fortunately, I've been blessed to make up for that. I've dug myself into some holes back in the day and was able to get out and thrive on the other side. And at this point, in my life, no regrets, because I have been able to make a lot of progress. And I know it's not necessarily the case for everyone. They made their mistakes and wish they wouldn't. They feel they would be much further ahead. And absolutely, that was my case at certain points in my life. But just being here and being aware that keeping up with the Joneses is the absolute opposite of what prepping is. I mean, that's the absolute opposite of what a preparer is, and now it's shameful to me, and I don't mean to insult anyone if you have a nice car, and I have decent cars. I'm happy to have reliable Toyotas. I'm very happy, but they're not as important to me as they once were, right? Having the nice car. And of course, now it's much more ludicrous to have the expensive vehicles more so than it was before.
You've evolved from a position where that's your plumage, right? You're like, oh, I gotta have this cool car so people think I'm cool. To now it's like
I'm successful.
The function of it is more important than the flash. And looking back on my journey, like, I was a dumb kid and bought a really nice expensive truck once or twice. I did a lot of things that I'm like not proud of, but we all do.
Yeah.
But do we learn from that and grow, or do we not? And thankfully, I look now and I'm like, there's certain vehicles that I wish I'd kept because they still run today and they'd be better suited for what we're trying to do. But those are good lessons in life to learn from. Um, Looking back on my preparedness journey, one of the things I think that changed the most for me was coming to Utah a second time, seeing the huge gap in preparedness events and being frustrated with them, because I've been going to preparedness expos from time to time for, man, 13, 14 years. And most of them were a joke. And you'd go and it'd be like Ferris Bueller's day off. And his, that teacher, and he's like
Bueller.
asking her, he's like, Bueller, anyone? Bueller? And you're
Mhm.
like, that whole part, that felt like most of the events I'd go to. And they were absolutely mind-bogglingly dull. And it was some sweet old lady. I'm sure somebody's grandma was just the most impressive person, but you put her on stage, never talk about canning, and it was canning, canning, anybody, canning,
Mhm.
and you're just like dying. Pull my teeth out. That's more exciting than this. You're just wanting to get out of there. And I'd go to these things to try to get ideas on how I can be better prepared. And it was at the time for callings. And I tried to get other people to attend those. And like, man, these are boring. These are dumb. These are lame. But I'd always find something that was like, oh, that was cool. And so I wanted to create something that was bigger and better, and have people have fun getting prepared. And that's how we met.
Yeah.
But I look at that early journey and I was just like, it's not the gear. It's not the tools. It's the mind. Preparing the mind, sharpening the mind, having a plan. And it's interesting because, like, for me, the more I started to learn and expand my mind, the more effective I got in my preparedness. And the more I went back to the basics, the safer I felt. Meaning I didn't have to worry about my next meal. I didn't have to worry about shelter. I didn't have to worry about things that a lot of people worry about, especially at the beginning of their journey. You'll get panic stricken. And I didn't have to worry about those. And even now, if I had to start all over tomorrow, I'd be annoyed, I'd be ticked, I'd be frustrated, but I'd be able to easily put a plan together and get ourselves into a situation where we're better prepared for our future no matter what. And I couldn't have done that without all the crazy things I've done in this journey anyways. Yeah. You will blow a lot of money on anything new when you get excited about it. And that's where we've made mistakes on food storage before, right? I wish I would have been here last week for Marcelo, because I love having that conversation with him. We've talked a little bit about it before ourselves,
Yeah.
but the way he's educated himself and the knowledge he possesses in food storage is
Oh my
second to
gosh.
none. I don't know anyone that knows more about everything than him.
Yeah. I, when I talk to him, I realize how little I know about food storage. And if you guys haven't seen that yet, go watch that video with Marcelo. He is such a wealth of knowledge. I mean, it's incredibly impressive.
Mm-hmm.
That is up now, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's
that just
posted.
went up.
Okay, that just went up today. So yeah, go watch that. That is, and and I am going to. So after that conversation, I went through my food storage and found exactly what in my food storage exactly what
I saw the
he was
pictures.
showing. Yeah, and I was going to post. I'll post some pictures, some number 10 cans that are bulging. They're only 10, 11 years old. And he says, "This is why. This is why. Everybody knows. Everybody, like air quotes. I didn't know, especially at the time." And that was kind of what I was alluding to when I make better choices on food storage. Right. Obviously, when I was becoming consciously competent, uh, probably early 2013, I started to buy food storage. And we had a local store here called Emergency Essentials. Great little store. I mean, they had a little bit of everything. The Augustin Foods, Blue Chip Group, whatever, who manufacture all these same foods. And not the best, not the worst, but affordable for what they are, right? And so that's what I was buying because I could afford it. I could justify the price. And now looking back, I'm pretty concerned about what I purchased, especially going in and seeing, I got 9 cans with others that I know are on the verge of doing the same thing, right? That I'm going to have to go throw away. So I'm going to jump in and take Marcelo's challenge and to get me some, higher quality food. And that's something that would have been hard for me to do at the time if I realized okay, this is this price and this is this price. Essentially, they look the same to me, but buying the higher quality, I know the lifespan is probably going to be double.
Mhm.
So it's going to make more sense to buy the longer lifespan. But that wouldn't have allowed me to buy as much at the time, and so on and so forth. It still is a learning process. Still something like I mentioned. What comment here is, my kids, I would like to think they listen to me, but they really don't. They've got to go out and make their own mistakes and learn for themselves. For dad to tell them, say, you don't want to do this because this is the outcome. They may listen to it and agree, but they still have to learn for themselves of their own personal experience. And that's the way it was for me. If you're not learning for yourself and making those mistakes, and hopefully small mistakes, nothing big, but help you to realize I need to look for somebody that can help me with this and that I can trust, and realize that that I don't want to make mistakes in this particular area. So, but and it's all very personal. Each individual person, it's very personal. If you can surrender your will to someone else and say, I trust you and I'm going to make this choice, that's good on you. That's good for you. I still don't know if I can do that a lot of the times. I got to figure it out for myself. So
what's funny is as you're talking about this, I thought, man, when I was a kid growing up, my mom would talk to the natural remedy people and get this medication, this nutrient, or this powder, or this supplement, or this or that, and what's funny is in episodes 71 and 72, we interviewed Alan Kay and Nicole Appelian from Alone. Nicole, as many of you guys know, I saw the thrown in the chat earlier. She just dropped another amazing knowledge bomb on the world. Her book of herbal remedies, now volumes 1 and 2, are a godsend. Like, we need to get back to the basics, back to real resources that can actually heal our bodies, right? Get back to everyone having that practical knowledge and application in our homes. And I went from growing up with this stuff to then, no, I have to call a doctor. I have to get a real medicine. I have to get something prescribed, to now full circle coming back saying, I'd rather not have anything prescribed because those things have side effects, and go back to what is real. What did God create for us to use? And how can I use that to get better health in my body? Right. But it's amazing because there's so much in the world that is poison. We have so much poison around us, in our foods, in our water, in our supplements. In anything you buy at the store should have a warning label on it, right? You go to the grocery store and it's not groceries, it's not real food. Even in the produce section, it's not even always safe food. So if you're not growing it yourself, if you're not learning these things and implementing these things yourself, like, that's the biggest gap in preparedness, I think, that we need to really address and fix going forward.
Yeah.
Spend more time learning how to solve it ourselves, grow it yourself. I love, we had J.R. Hendry on just a few episodes ago talking about ways to do your own fertilization and have your own regenerative garden, right? Your regenerative permaculture. And it was just like mind-blowing for me. Well, now we talk about Nicole Appelian and her books, which are fantastic. We all have copies. New one's coming out, so you're going to go buy that one too, right? So we've got to get better at learning what are the good resources and sticking to those types of resources. This group that we've put together, I mean, we've got you in the chat, Utah Mike, Kat McDWA, Rebecca Burton. You guys are all in there. Practical Civilian, Web Dad.
Sandra, yeah.
You guys are a lot of the like staples who come in with these knowledge bombs, and it's fantastic to be able to communicate back and forth. You guys are in the emergency group, Emergency Prep and Self-Reliance. You're also in our Facebook and our YouTube channels. Like, we have so many neat people who have experience and wisdom that it takes what we have and elevates it, because we're all learning together and improving together and becoming more resilient together. And I think that's one of my favorite things is, like, you don't know what you don't know. And that's a big gap. to try to overcome, and trying to be the only one to have it all never works. You have to have a community.
Yeah, I think, looking back, I think something that I would have considered more and probably worked harder at in my earlier prepping days, my younger days, is strategic relocation.
Oh yeah.
I mean, bugging out permanently, right? Getting out, and I know a lot of you are on the same page here. I still live in the suburbs. I'm on the edge of the town. I'm near near BLM land. And I have a bug out location I'm trying to get to, and if I were to start over, or have the opportunity to start over, or talk to my younger self or whatever, I would have realized how important that is. I would have made those steps sooner. Right. So that's one of my advice to whoever's listening to this. If you're considering it, if you think it's going to be important at some time in the future, I would say take those steps as soon as you possibly can. I mean, if that's something you want to do, obviously that's very personal. But I really wish I would have started that sooner, because I think that's really what will contribute to my family's resiliency. And I've got a pretty good jump on it at this point, luckily, and been blessed that way. But the sooner, the better in a lot of these things. And I think that's one of them.
Well, the sooner the better. But like, you go back 10 years. Could you have done it?
No.
Right?
Not 10 years. But spend it up by a year or two? Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
If I was smarter.
Well, and it's funny too, because it's like I look at our situation, and it's what I long to do is to get back to living on our own little farm. Right? That's my goal, and that's my retirement plan. I want to retire sooner than later.
Yeah.
And the more self-reliant I can be, the better. I enjoy my neighbors. I love my neighborhood, but I don't love where I live, even though strategically it's got some advantages. It's not where I would have picked. But I'm blessed to be here, but it's not ideal. It doesn't have the ideal water options. Like, I look at all these things and I'm like, yeah, the whole bugging out thing, that's the sexiest lie that's been sold.
Yeah.
Prepping.
Exactly.
That is probably the biggest garbage pile of manure that doesn't do anything for you, that you hear over and over again. Oh, it's your bug out plan. Get your bug out bags. Get your bug out bag.
That used to be so huge. It's definitely tapered down.
I hated it then,
yeah,
and I hate it now. I hate it. Strategic relocation is the definition of it is to relocate out of a duress location to a stocked, surplus, fortified, and protected location, right? Bugging out was what you do to strategically relocate to another location that has all the resources, personnel, and everything else you need. However, in bugging out, the terminology that we use in prepping, it's, I'm just going to abandon my house, my fortifications, and everything I have to go commune in the wild like a crazy hippie with no clue what I'm going to go do. Right. And that's sold to everybody like, yeah, I can figure it out on the way. Here's a survival book and a compass and have fun. Or you need a backpack. Oh, let's sell you a backpack and 72-hour gear worth of garbage junk that we don't know what it is. Right. I firmly believe that most 72-hour kits are going to kill you. Most of them will. It's a bunch of garbage crap.
Yeah.
Right. We talked about in a prior episode that if you have a really good knife, that's better than most of the other gear things you're going to need. Right. If you have a good knife, a sharpening stone, and know how to use them both, boom, great. Everything that's in your brain, in your head, that's more valuable than what you can stuff in a backpack. So if there's nothing of value in your head, in your brain, then you need to spend some time studying, learning, and actually doing things. If you don't know how to identify wild edibles and forage, your bugging out's going to kill you. Well, if you don't know how to filter and purify water, bugging out's going to kill you. Right.
Yeah. And that's kind of was, one of my pro tips, air quotes, for preppers is all the gear all the time. right? Um, we just recorded, our pro tips before this episode. And I'll just give you one. Is those of you who ride motorcycles and the serious motorcycle riders, the professionals, they have all the gear all the time: helmet, gloves, jackets, pads, pants, boots, all the gear all the time, because you never know when you're gonna maybe get sideswiped or slide over, fall over in the gravel or whatever and get hurt. And so that's my approach as well, is all the EDC all the time. If you don't have it on you, kind of like a parachute, if you don't have it, you'll never need it again, right? If you don't have it and you need it, you're never going to need it again, right? So especially parachute, right? And so that's the way I roll, right? Is all the gear all the time. I go heavy in my vehicle, on my person, and that's just what I'm comfortable with, and I have the skills with what I carry. And if I find myself without, in a certain particular situation, I'm going to have to improvise. But if I have it with me, I'm so much more comfortable. But that's a much larger topic as well. So,
what's funny is we've learned a lot. We've made a lot of mistakes, and we're now at a point where we can look at our stuff and say, "Oh, I don't really need that." But if I got space, I'm taking that, right? You know at this point what you need and don't need on a daily basis, but you still want to take the as much as you can if you've got the space. We talked about in the last episode, we just went on a trip we went to Disneyland. There it is, everybody. Went to Disneyland. I love and hate that place. It's a mouse trap designed to catch humans and take all your money. But the trip out there, we drove a rental car, and we took our little carrying case that you can throw on top of a car, luggage rack, and we shoved it full of stuff so that I could have all of my emergency prep stuff. And it's like, yeah, the whole car's full, but we had to have all of our emergency prep stuff, and we had to have extra food and water. And we had everyone else is looking at us going, why don't you just eat out? Why don't you just buy the stuff when you get there? And I'm like, what if we don't make it there? Mm-hmm. There's so many other what ifs. I'm like, we have the space. It's absolutely insane not to have it just in case.
But you're paranoid. You're paranoid if
it cost us half what it would have cost food wise.
Yeah.
Because we bought it all here instead of in California. We went to get some food, some things that we were running low on, and I'm like, ugh, we don't need that. We'll just eat the other stuff we have. We're not. I was gonna get a can of about 2 pounds of peanut butter, and it was triple what we paid here in Utah. Triple, and we just drove 10 hours, and it was triple what we like. That blew my mind. And so I'm like, you know what? We're good. We're good. So planning ahead, utilizing what you have, always go heavy when you can go heavy. If you got a pack mule, let the mule pack your stuff, right? Simple lesson. If you can go heavy, go heavy. If you can't go heavy, consider not going.
I agree with
Make
that.
life easier. Be resilient. I mean, what more can I say? Guys, this is Prepper Talk Radio. This is radio for the ready-minded. You're listening to this because these are things you're already thinking about all the time. These are things that you're already putting into practice all the time, or you're starting to implement more and more, right? You don't have to go do everything that shows up on the radar. You don't have to wake up every 15 minutes and check your news feeds, right? You can sleep at night because you're prepared. It's that adage we've talked about, that the farmer who hires the guy who says his qualifying thing is, I can sleep through the storm. That's where you want to get your life to, and that's what we're working on and helping everybody else get to, so that you can sleep during the storm. You don't have to be out there checking the roofs. You don't have to be out there making sure that the livestock are secured, right? You take care of it all before you go to bed so you can sleep well, so you can be at peace. Because in preparedness, there is peace.
Amen, brother.
Well, guys, if you want to check out some of the cool things we're doing, one of those is our good friends over at Ham Radio Prep, hamradioprep.com. Use the code PrepperTalk to save 10%. Go get that license. If you're in our group, you know we've got a contest going on. We've got one given away. We're waiting on the other confirmation. If he doesn't get a confirmation to me today, we'll have another bag still up for grabs with a UV5R and some cool swag. Come get it, guys. We got fun stuff going on in the group all the time. Also, if you want some really good food that's going to last a long time, you don't have to worry about spoilage. Go to survivalfrog.com and use the code PrepperTalk, save some money, but get their cooked 25-year shelf life food. It's meat, chicken, beef, ground beef. It's amazing. I love it. I ate most of mine. I need to get some more. But go use the code. I'm going to use the code PrepperTalk. Save 10% at checkout. Survivalfrog.com. Guys, thank you for tuning in and not tuning out. Thank you for being of the Ready-Minded Brigade. Focusing on God, family, and country to have a better quality of life, more prepared and less scared. Thank you for being part of the family and part of the show tonight. So without going on and on and on, because I could, Shane, you got any final thoughts?
No, just love chatting with you guys. It's the best part, kind of like back to the old radio days. That was always the best part, is getting somebody on the phone and seeing how crazy they are, because we had some crazy callers and it was a lot of fun, I tell you.
We definitely did.
It was crazy. But here it's a little more controlled environment, which is awfully nice.
More controlled. Mostly we appreciate the fact that you guys are all crazy like foxes, as in wise, as opposed to, we had some really weird calls back in the day. I do miss some of the excitement that brought, but absolutely love the community we've built. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll catch you guys on the next episode. And until then, keep that head on a swivel. Have a good night.
See you guys next week.